The movie begins with a serene temple scene where a ritual is being performed. We see a priest reading palms and predicting the future for those seeking guidance. Meanwhile, a guru imparts wisdom to his disciple, sharing valuable teachings. A group of scientists visits the guru, explaining their plans to establish a government space research center. They seek his guidance to ensure the project's success. Among them, one scientist seems doubtful of the guru's abilities. When the guru touches his hand, he immediately senses the hesitation in his mind. The scientist admits that he is scientist and have questions by nature. The guru, unfazed, begins asking him a series of questions. The guru asks the scientist, "Do you know about Arundhati and Vasistha?" The scientist responds, "Yes, they are twin stars." The guru then explains, "The telescope was invented in the 16th century, yet in Hindu marriages, we've referenced these stars for centuries. How could our ancestors have identified them without telescopes?" The scientist is astonished by this revelation. The guru continues, asking about Kepler's laws and their application in modern rocket science. He elaborates, Kepler's laws have their origins in ancient astrology and astronomy. The scientist, intrigued, asks, "Who is the next great astrologer after you?" The guru replies, "I have a student who is sought after by politicians and many others. His name is Vikramaditya." In the next scene, we see Vikram meeting Indian Prime Minister Indira Gandhi. She shows him her hand, and as Vikram reads her palm, vivid visions of her future start appearing in his mind. He sees widespread riots breaking out across the country, with chaos and unrest spreading everywhere. Vikram tells her, "You are destined to make a significant decision that will be remembered in history. You are going to impose an emergency in India." The Prime Minister is taken aback and struggles to believe his prediction. Meanwhile, the scientist asks the guru, "Can we meet Vikram?" The guru responds, "No, he has left India and moved abroad." In the next scene, we see Vikram living his dream life, traveling across beautiful tourist destinations. He is accompanied by a young woman who falls deeply in love with him. She confesses her feelings and tells Vikram that she wants to marry him. However, Vikram gently declines, saying love and marriage have no place in my life. Being a renowned astrologer, he is already aware of his own future and believes that such relationships are not meant for him. In the following scene, we are introduced to Prerna, a determined young woman traveling on a train. Prerna stands confidently near the door of the moving train. A group of men approaches her, trying to intimidate her. Calm and composed, Prerna ties her scarf around her waist and hands one end of it to one of the men. Without hesitation, she leans out of the train door, striking a bold and daring Titanic pose, her arms stretched wide as the wind rushes past her. The sight shocks and terrifies the men, who, unable to handle her fearless attitude, quickly retreat and run away, leaving her unbothered and victorious. In the next scene, Prerna enters the hospital's emergency ward, where a patient is struggling to breathe and claims he needs immediate attention. Being a skilled doctor, Prerna examines him carefully but quickly realizes that the man is faking his illness. She firmly tells him, "You're not sick, there's nothing wrong with you." Suddenly, the hospital's dean walks into the ward, and all the doctors immediately return to their seats, visibly nervous. The dean, however, calls Prerna into his office. It's revealed that he is her uncle. Concerned about her well-being, he advises Prerna to go home and rest, as she is unwell but continues to work tirelessly despite her condition. Vikram is traveling on a train when he notices Prerna standing at the same spot. Their eyes meet, and a silent connection forms. Prerna once again ties her muffler around her waist and extends the other end toward Vikram, letting him hold it. She leans out of the train door with her eyes closed, recreating her signature pose. Watching her intently, Vikram instinctively wraps the muffler around a pillar for support and leans out alongside her. When Prerna finally opens her eyes and notices Vikram mirroring her, she is startled and looks at him in surprise. Vikram sees Prerna again, but this time on a bus. They can't communicate directly because they are on separate buses, but Vikram writes her name on the window, trying to get her attention. Prerna ignores him, but Vikram is still drawn to her, finding her intriguing. In the next scene, Guruji visits Vikram's home. Vikram gives him a warm welcome and respects him deeply. Guruji presents Vikram with a book titled Palmistry 99% Science and expresses his desire for Vikram to write about it. However, Vikram is hesitant and disagrees. He argues that people once treated astrology as superstition, and he worked to prove that astrology is a science. Now, Guruji is suggesting that astrology is only 99% true, which conflicts with Vikram's beliefs. Guruji explains that no science is ever 100% true, and if God has already written the course of everything, humans must possess the power to think and discover for themselves. Vikram counters by suggesting that, if that were the case, God must have already written our destiny too. Vikram goes to meet a wealthy man. During their conversation, Vikram gets face to face with him and starts reading his palm. He sees certain visions and tells the man that he seems to have an interest in politics. The man is impressed by Vikram's abilities but points out that his future doesn't have politics but a businessman. Vikram, however, confidently tells him that on November 20th, he will take over his father's business. This doesn't sit well with the rich man. He insists him to read again, but Vikram explains that he only needs to read a palm once to see both the past and future of a person. The man considers striking a deal with Vikram, asking him to step into politics, but Vikram refuses and leaves the meeting. Frustrated, his men follow Vikram, leading to a chase. In an unexpected turn of events, Vikram meets with an accident. Severely injured, he ends up in the same hospital where Prerna works. The hospital dean reviews Vikram's reports and asks him how the accident happened. Vikram responds, saying it was because of Prerna. This confession reveals how deeply he's fallen for her, almost obsessively. Hearing this, the hospital staff and patients start laughing, amused by his love-struck state. Even Prerna begins to feel the sincerity of his affection. Vikram then tells Prerna that he's in the city only for a few days and wants to spend time with her. He invites her for a coffee date, but Prerna politely declines. Despite this, the two start spending time together, exploring the city and sharing moments. Slowly, it feels as though they've become good friends. Prerna and Vikram are traveling by train when a fellow passenger recognizes Vikram as the famous palm reader who can see the future. Curious, the passengers start paying attention to him. One man insists that Vikram read his daughter's palm to see her future. Reluctantly, Vikram agrees and looks at her hand. He tells her that pursuing a career in music is not a good idea and that she should focus on her studies instead. Hearing this, other passengers flock to him, eager to have their palms read as well. However, Vikram and Prerna quickly get off the train to avoid the crowd. Prerna, impressed by Vikram's abilities and confidence, starts to admire him even more. Just then, Vikram has a sudden vision. He concentrates deeply and realizes something horrifying: a terrible accident is about to befall the train they just left. He warns Prerna, saying the train is in danger, and sprints after it in a desperate attempt to stop it. Vikram pushes a tree onto the tracks, hoping to block the train, but it switches to another track and continues on its way. Vikram is filled with regret, unable to prevent the disaster. Later, Prerna is watching the news and sees a report confirming a tragic accident involving the same train. All the passengers aboard have died, except for the girl whose palm Vikram had read earlier. Prerna's uncle warns her to stay away from Vikram, believing his predictions and involvement are not good for her. Vikram, unaware of her illness, is simply trying to offer guidance. Despite her uncle's objections, Prerna meets Vikram again and asks him to read her palm to reveal her future. As Vikram examines her hand, he tells her that she has a long life ahead, will fulfill her dream of opening a hospital, and will one day meet someone who will love her deeply. Hearing this, Prerna feels hopeful, but suddenly, her nose starts bleeding, and she collapses. She is rushed to the hospital, where Vikram waits anxiously for updates. The hospital dean informs Vikram that Prerna has a brain tumor and only 2 months to live. Distraught by this revelation, Vikram refuses to believe it and reassures Prerna that the future he saw for her is real. She will live a long life and achieve her dreams. He insists that nothing will happen to her. Prerna, however, can't shake the conflicting thoughts. She keeps replaying Vikram's words in her mind and decides to confirm the diagnosis by sending her reports to another hospital. Unfortunately, the second opinion also confirms the grim prognosis of her having only 2 months to live. Her uncle tries to convince her to trust science and dismiss Vikram's predictions, arguing that they are baseless. However, Prerna remains torn, stating that Vikram's prophecies have never been wrong before. Despite her faith in Vikram, her uncle refuses to believe in his abilities, adding tension to an already difficult situation. In the next scene, the dean devises a plan to disprove Vikram's predictions. He takes handprints of 4 deceased individuals and his own handprints, presenting them to Vikram. He challenges him, saying, "If you're truly a great palmist, then tell me how these 10 people died." Vikram, amused, asks why this experiment is necessary. The dean responds, "I need to prove to Prerna that your predictions are false." Vikram remains calm and confidently states, "Prerna will be fine and live a long life." He begins examining the handprints and quickly realizes that these are not from 10 different individuals, they belong to only 5 people. One by one, Vikram describes each handprint, revealing the cause of death and details of the person's past. For instance, he points to one handprint and says, "This belonged to a man who had 2 marriages and passed away due to a severe stomach infection." The accuracy of his revelations leaves the doctors and the dean in awe. He continues detailing the lives and deaths of the remaining prints. Finally, Vikram reaches the 5th handprint, which turns out to be the dean's own. Smiling, Vikram says, "A wealthy and healthy doctor. Do you want to know how you'll die?" The dean, shaken but convinced of Vikram's extraordinary abilities, no longer doubts him. He grabs Vikram's hand, desperate, and asks, "Will Prerna really survive?" Vikram reassures him with unwavering confidence, "She will be fine. Nothing will happen to her." The dean, moved by Vikram's conviction, begins to believe in his words. In the next scene, we see the same wealthy man enjoying a game of golf. As he plays, he discusses his desire to enter politics with a close friend. His friend questions his decision, saying, "You own such a massive business empire, and yet you want to step into politics. It doesn't make sense." Their conversation is interrupted by one of his men, who arrives with urgent news said his father has passed away. The realization dawns on him that he will now inherit and take over his father's business. Suddenly, he recalls Vikram's prophecy, that his future lay in business, not politics, and that on November 20th, he would take over the business. The accuracy of Vikram's prediction leaves him speechless as he begins to grasp the weight of Vikram's abilities. Prerna visits Aditya's home and meets his mother. Aditya takes her on a tour of his house, and during the visit, Prerna stumbles upon his diary. Curiosity gets the better of her, and she begins reading it. She discovers that Aditya has written about her, how they met and how she became a part of his life. Suddenly, Aditya walks in, and he hurriedly hides the diary in his coat. Later, they share dinner together and sit under the open sky. As the cold night sets in, Aditya offers Prerna his coat. Overwhelmed by emotions, Prerna confesses her love for him. However, Aditya rejects her feelings, saying, "Love and marriage are not written in my fate." Prerna is heartbroken. That evening, Aditya's guru arrives at his house. They talk privately, while Prerna remembers the diary and decides to read it again. As she flips through the pages, she discovers a line that shocks her. Aditya believes she entered his life even though it wasn't written in his destiny. Meanwhile, the guru advises Aditya, "No science is ever 100% accurate. When I predict someone's future, 99% of people believe it. But there's always that 1% who defy it and carve their own path. These are the people who make history." Aditya replies that he has never met anyone from that 1%, to which the guru says, that 1% create their own destiny. Guru asks Aditya to read his hand. As Prerna reads on, she finds a devastating revelation in the diary. Aditya's death is foretold, it will happen by drowning in the sea. Shocked, the diary slips from her hands. At the same moment, the guru senses something ominous and is visibly disturbed. Guru also realized this death and seen his destiny. Aditya tells his guru that he doesn't want to change his future but wants to see it unfold as it's meant to be. Meanwhile, Prerna receives life-changing news from her uncle. Her tumor can be treated through surgery, and she has a chance to survive. Her family rejoices, but the realization dawns on Prerna that Aditya's prophecy might come true, just as her own fate is being rewritten. In their final moments together, Aditya meets Prerna one last time. They share their last precious moments, cherishing the time they have before destiny takes its course. Aditya moves to London, but he feels a deep sense of loneliness. Meanwhile, Prerna also struggles to move on, unable to forget him. One day, as Aditya walks down a London street, he encounters the same girl whose hand he had read on the train. She had survived the tragic train accident but lost her right hand in the process. Recognizing him, she approaches and says, "Look at my hand now. Your prediction was wrong." She reveals that despite losing her hand, she is now working successfully in the music industry. Aditya is taken aback by her determination and remembers his guru's words: only 1% of people rewrite their own destiny. This encounter makes Aditya realize his mistake. In blindly accepting fate, he begins to regret his decisions and yearns to return to Prerna. While going through his diary, he finds an entry by Prerna. It reads, "I found my love, but I can't imagine living without you. I'll have no choice but to end my life." Alarmed, Aditya decides to go back to her immediately. However, before she can act on her feelings, Prerna is involved in an accident and is rushed to the hospital for emergency surgery. Aditya calls the hospital, but her operation is ongoing. He sends her a heartfelt message: he loves her, and I want to spend his whole life with you. Determined to reunite with her, he heads to the airport, but no flights are available. Desperate, he spots a ship bound for Italy and jumps aboard at the last moment. Coincidentally, the ship's captain is an old friend of his, and Aditya convinces him to help him reach Rome quickly. However, tragedy strikes as a tsunami hits while the ship is at sea. The vessel loses balance, and the crew abandons the ship, leaving Aditya alone. As the ship begins to sink, Aditya realizes that his own prophecy, dying in the depths of the ocean, is about to come true. Despite the looming danger, Aditya refuses to give up. His will to reunite with Prerna gives him the strength to fight. As the ship sinks, reminiscent of the Titanic, Aditya finds himself in the middle of the ocean. A massive tsunami wave approaches, threatening to swallow him whole. But instead of succumbing to fear, Aditya roars like a lion, determined to face the wave head-on, defying the very fate he once believed in. Aditya finally reunites with Prerna, who is now in a wheelchair due to her accident. Despite her condition, Prerna is overjoyed to see him. Aditya, visibly weak and battered from his ordeal. They exchange heartfelt glances, their emotions speaking louder than words. Prerna moves closer to him, and Aditya offers her a rose, symbolizing his enduring love. Both are overwhelmed with happiness. Prerna has found her true love, and Aditya has discovered a purpose to live. The film beautifully concludes with a powerful message that destiny is not written in the lines of your palms but is the result of your actions and choices. If you enjoyed this recap, don't forget to share it with your friends, subscribe to our channel, and stay tuned for more amazing movie recaps.